Michael Lewis is here. His 1989 book, Liar's Poker, defined the 1980s investment world. He's now turned his attention to baseball. His latest book is Moneyball. It tells the story of how Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's, turned a small market team into a winning franchise. I am pleased to have Michael here. You just said to me before we started, this is what, the best experience, the best story, the best what?
It's the best story I've ever walked into as a writer. I was astonished that it existed in baseball. And for all sorts of reasons, it was a great story.
But here's what I thought, to interrupt you.
Right.
I thought, Michael's living out in Oakland, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. He's just out there, and so here's a story. So he decided, because he's very good at spinning a tale, to write this book about the Oakland A's. That's all I thought was there. And you're saying this is the best story you've ever found?
It's the best book I've ever written, I'm sure of it, and the best story I've ever found. It's an astonishing story because it's about not just baseball, though it's more baseball than money. But it's about markets. There's this wonderful novelistic character at the center of it. And the gist of it, that this team that has no money is able to compete only by finding people who other teams have found defective and putting them together into this unit of underdogs that has become a just juggernaut during the regular season for the last 4 years.
And this is the opposite end of the Yankee experience.
It is. I mean, the Yankees can go and buy whatever they need, and if they make mistakes, it doesn't matter because they can bury them. You know, if they spend $10 million on a Cuban pitcher who can't pitch in the big leagues, it doesn't matter because they got hundreds of millions or more after that. This is a team that's got $40 million to spend on baseball players as opposed to 140 or 150. And so they've got to be absolutely right with all of it or it all falls apart. And it's forced them to rethink the game of baseball. And just the idea that in something as hoary and traditional as baseball, it was possible for there to be innovation and new knowledge was astonishing to me.
You leave me wide open. What did they rethink and what is the innovation that they made happen?
Well, they've rethought everything from on-field strategies, which you do during a baseball game, to the valuation of baseball players. I mean, they have taken the spirit of the financial markets, especially the financial markets in the 80s, when the markets got very complicated and people all of a sudden who had advanced degrees in physics and economics would show up on Salomon Brothers trading floor and be able to price securities and value them in a way the rest of the market didn't understand and make huge sums of such riskless profits. That is what this is. You have Billy Beane is the John Merriweather of baseball, and
John Merriweather, a big star there, later had some problems in another deal.
Yeah, but he made billions of dollars at Salomon Brothers, figuring out how you should value these securities. What Billy Beane has done, same thing, hired very smart people, drawn on knowledge from outside the industry, and applied it to baseball players. Said, look, baseball players are a collection of traits. They have foot speed, they have ability to throw and field, they have ability to hit with power, get on base, hit for batting average. What are these things worth? What is each trait worth, in a way? And he looks at the market and says, well, some of these traits are radically overvalued. Foot speed. Market for foot speed is crazy. People pay way too much for it, so don't buy it. Don't buy it. The market for just an ability to get on base, even if it's an especially if it's in unsensational ways, like walking a lot, dramatically undervalued. Yeah. Go buy that. Pitchers who throw 100 miles an hour, dramatically overvalued. He gets one of those in his minor league system, and he waits until the guy's had a stretch of a month or so that's really great, and then he peddles them off to another team for too high a price. And
so what does he look for in a pitcher?
Deception. The ability to deceive a hitter, and if you can, and the ability to deceive a hitter with stuff that isn't terribly, without throwing that hard, is undervalued. So, I mean, take his look. He has a Cy Young Award winner on his staff, Barry Zito. Barry Zito won the Cy Young Award last year in the American League, best pitcher in the American League. When Barry Zito was in college, before the A's drafted him, Barry Zito went to a tryout for the San Diego Padres. He wanted to play for the San Diego Padres. They looked at his fastball and they said, son, you don't throw hard enough to pitch in the big leagues. That is a big league baseball prejudice that they are rethinking. So you've got this. It's because you've got this. I mean, the traditions of baseball are glorious, but the traditions of baseball are often at times inefficient. And you've got these inefficiencies in baseball that that this one organization has sorted out and is exploiting. And I just thought, what an incredible story.
They also figured out that college stars may be overlooked because they wanted to draft them all out of high school.
Well, what they figured out is that the scouting world generally, baseball scouts, they value excessively promise rather than performance. So talent rather than actual skills at playing baseball. So they prefer. There's been a prejudice in favor of the 17-year-old phenom who everybody can imagine one day being a Hall of Fame baseball player. Billy Beane was that person. That's the other thing that's so great about this. That he was maybe the top high school prospect in the country. And he had everything that the scouts look for, which is a body, a great body that they could imagine filling out and becoming, huge and strong. He could run like the wind. He could throw. But he didn't have the mentality to be a big league hitter. He fell apart in the batter's box. And they could have, if they had
You can't teach that?
You can't teach that. You can't teach that. And you especially can't teach, and this is something that the A's have discovered, you can't teach one of the traits. I mean, there are hitters, Soriano for the Yankees, Nomar Garcia-Parra for the Red Sox, who are very valuable hitters to an offense who have no discipline at the plate. They swing at all kinds of things they shouldn't swing at. They don't walk very much. That kind of hitter exists, but he's rare. And if he exists, he's expensive. The kind of hitter they look for, who has a lot, who sort of strings out his at bat so the pitcher gets worn down, who walks a lot, who doesn't swing at bad pitches. That approach to hitting. They've decided can't be. They've tried to teach it for 10 years in the A's organization, and they've had very little success. And they've decided that this is an innate trait in a baseball player. That maybe if you got them in diapers, Billy Beane said, we could teach them how to behave at the plate.
Now, why doesn't Billy Beane write a book?
Well, it's funny. Billy Beane didn't want a book written. The whole thing is very funny because the book, it's only been out a week. It has created a furor in Major League Baseball. There is, you don't see it yet, but it has, sports columnists have been, on one side or the other, very violently
basically
opposed.
Saying Billy Beane has got it all wrong.
Basically saying that this is outrageous, that Billy Beane led a writer into the inner sanctum, into his office to be a fly on the wall for a year. But the truth is that Billy Beane, I went to him saying, I'd just like to write a magazine article trying to understand how it is that this team with no money wins all these games, because the commissioner's office says it's all about money, and you can't win unless you have money, and that's why you need to fix the financial structure of baseball. Well, he said, okay, if the magazine piece, come hang around for a couple of weeks. I hung around for a couple of weeks, and I said, oh my God, this is sensational. I mean, it is sensational. This is, in rethinking baseball, they're opening up. And that here, I said it was like John Merriweather, like a Wall Street trader approach to it. But the assets weren't stocks and bonds; they were flesh and bones. They were the players. So the players they're big characters in this book. But anyway, I got so excited about the thing. I said, "Look, you just got to let me do this. It's too good a story." And he was dragged very reluctantly into this project and has gotten all sorts of grief for letting me do it. And it's been suggested that he sort of sponsored it or invited it, but it was just the opposite. I had to use all my repertorial guile to get this thing.
So it seems to me that he is far more valuable, if I listen to you, than any player playing the game.
You put your finger on it. That is the big inefficiency in baseball right now. And you know who figured that out? The man who just bought the Boston Red Sox, John Henry, made his money on Wall Street, understands how markets work, looked at baseball. He understood it because he'd owned the Florida Marlins before. But he looked at it and he said, my goodness, we have a huge opportunity here. We get Billy Beane in here, and we can exploit the inefficiencies of the game. And he offered Billy Beane $12.5 million over 5 years to come and run the Red Sox. And he himself acknowledged to me that was cheap, that you could have justified paying Billy Beane a lot more money than that and still come out ahead.
So what happened?
Well, it's funny. Billy Beane took the job and then went to bed and couldn't sleep.
It's just the idea of all that money.
Well, it's funny because
so uncomfortable.
Well, you know what made him uncomfortable? This was very funny, Charlie. Is when he was 17 years old, and the New York Mets came to him and said, "You're going to be a future Hall of Fame baseball player. You are God's gift to baseball. You're the best prospect we've seen in ages." He had a scholarship to go to Stanford. and he was going to go to Stanford and play baseball and football at Stanford. And he changed his mind. The Mets kind of
listened to the money.
The Mets scout took him to the big league clubhouse, and he said it was then it all became kind of exciting and real for him. So he listened to the money. That's right. He listened to the money, and he has had almost a superstition about money ever since then. He was never going to make a decision for money, and so the fact that it was partly all this money was out there, I think it freaked him out, and he said he wasn't going to do it again. So he turned it down in the end.
Well, how many World Series have the Oakland A's won under him?
None. I mean, he's been doing it for 5 years, right? He took a team that was below 500, and each year they've won more games during the regular season. Been in the playoffs the last 3 years. They won as many games as the Yankees did last year. There are 2 points to make about this. That's what people say in baseball. He hadn't won a World Series. But let me tell you, look, what happens, from the point of view of the guy who...
It's like what they say on Wall Street, if you're so smart, you're not rich.
Well, that may be more valid. But from the point of view of the guy who's running the thing, who's just putting the players on the field, there's only so much you can control. And what he can control is in a large statistical sample, when there are 162 games, he can put a team on the field that is a quality, competitive team that can get it to the playoffs. In these playoffs, they're crapshoots. 3 out of 5 games, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And he's actually built a team that is rather. They've been in the playoffs the last 3 years. They've lost in the first round all 3 years. And baseball people want to say this whole thing is what he's doing can't be so sensational because he hadn't won a World Series. But anybody in any sense can see that the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs.
Are you so believing in Billy that you think whatever he wanted to do, he would have done it well? That he had some kind of real talent, or is this baseball talent?
Interesting question. I think that, look, he's one of these people who he's very, very bright. He's very charming. He's got ability to move through the world and be a success. If he had landed on Wall Street, he'd have been a superstar trader. I mean, no question. He's exactly that guy.
You know traders.
Oh yeah, no, he would have been the best. He would have been great at it. But he's having said that, I wouldn't say he's a genius. I'd say that he's a very gifted, ferociously competitive person who has landed in a very peculiar situation.
Yeah, but the reason I asked the question is because, I mean, he basically took what is sort of an intelligent approach to the thing. Basically said, we got myths in this game, we're chasing rabbits in this game, let's take a look at what really matters. What matters is getting on base.
Right.
What matters is getting people out if you're a pitcher.
That's right.
It's not a fastball, it's getting people out.
That's right. I mean, it would make, you were sitting there listening to it, it would make complete sense to you that that's true. The trick, the hard part of his job is imposing reform on a big league clubhouse. I mean, turning the organization, making people who are used to doing things one way do them another way. And he's just very good at that because he's relentless. But you know, you asked me, the reason he's in this sport is that baseball rendered him unfit for anything but itself. He got out of he spent 10 years running around the minor leagues and stuff, and he gets to be 27 years old, and he doesn't have a college degree, and he's not making it as a baseball player. That's the only thing he knew how to do.
One last point, because I got to go. It is this notion that I think Billy Beane teaches, that if you teach somebody to hit, power will come. I know other people, in golf, for example, teach them power, and accuracy will come.
Ooh, not in baseball. I mean, it is. I think it's true that you can turn good hitters into power hitters, but turning a power hitter into a good hitter, I mean, the ball's moving is the problem. I mean, that business of just making good contact is so hard that, and it's instinctive. Whereas the power can, that's weight training and whatever else you do.
And
so Jason Giambi,
and also, but I mean, Tiger Woods will say it has to do also with musculature too.
But Jason Giambi, he didn't hit home runs when he was in college. He didn't hit home runs in the minor leagues. He became a power hitter, and this often happens.
And then they sold him to the Yankees.
They didn't sell him. They couldn't afford it anymore.
I know. Yeah. Moneyball, as you can see it right there. He wants you to know that when you go to the bookstore, you ask for Moneyball. Thank you. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Michael Lewis, thank you for joining us. See you next time.